Hi, this is Ann Weirheim. I'm the practice director here at Apex Systems. And today we are going to be expanding on our 30-minute Thursdays. Jim will be presenting Lawson Excel add-ins for our V10 customers. Without going into all 18 areas of our solution offerings, our Infor practice offers global solutions for industry through digital innovations like Infor Epic and Agile, workforce mobilization through staffing to support any size implementation, and our modern enterprise solutions covering migrations to standing up a PMO and running it for you. Most of all, our Infor practice works with clients beyond the cloud, offering the right services at the right time. Before the project, our advisory services guide the client through the selection process and assess organizational readiness through BPA and process design. We offer program governance and change management services to start clients off on the right foot for their implementation. During the project, we offer prescriptive guidance to reduce risk, duration, and cost. And after the project, managed services helps clients to sustain their investment through on-demand service, staff augmentation, and incident support to be your partner before, during, and after the project. So I'll let Jim go ahead and introduce himself, and we'll get started with the main part of our presentation today.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to see if maybe do you want to continue presenting, Anna, or do you want me to see if I can get the slide to work here? We'll just go with what we have here. That's fine. Good afternoon, all. I'm Jim Wadilla. I'm an Apex consultant, and I've been working in the Lawson and Infor space for over 20 years. Let's go next slide, please. We'll jump right in to the overview. Sorry, Anna, I lost my screen again. And we're also going to take a look at the upload wizard. We are not going to be touching on the mail merge today. Next slide, please. Yep, you can just keep going. Yep. So we're gonna look at the Excel Lawson Excel add-ins for V9 and V10 applications. I'm gonna quickly just note here for everyone that the add-ins version that I'm using is 10.09.148. And we're going to start, with an example looking at the Lawson Query Wizard, which lets you extract data from live real-time information within the system. And the example we're actually going to run through is one in finance for vendor tables and vendor locations. But of course, that's just the example. You can use this query wizard, of course, with any module and any file. The Lawson Upload Wizard is the other component, which lets you load Excel worksheet data directly into specified Lawson forms. So any form that you typically might enter data into, let's say, for example, budgets, maybe into FB20.6, or journal entries into GL40, or assets in AM20 and so on. Any one of those forms, we can build an upload wizard for, and so you can upload data more quickly. The second bullet item there is that Infor says you do not need to make any changes to the Infor Lawson system to use the wizards. You don't even need to open an Infor Lawson portal or form. That is technically true, but I do find it useful to have a Lawson form open. And then the next bullet for uploads, you can upload practically any form in most extensions, as mentioned. A main form might be, let's say, for example, AP10.1, and an extension might be AP10.5. So, we can typically upload to all of those. Uploads results will appear immediately, line by line. So it's very user-friendly. I worked with another ERP system upload, and you had to go into like a results log to see, what went through and what didn't. So it was not quite as quick and easy. The Excel add-in upload actions available are add, change, delete, and as well as any actions that you may have in the line function code. And those can vary, obviously, by form. I will just mention also that if you do need to do an upload and you need to use special actions, some forms have special actions on them, such as, let's say, release is a special action on some forms. If you do need to use a special action and create an upload for that, then Infor has what are called self-contained workbooks that you would need to register for. And those allow you to do the special actions as well as combining steps and multiple actions. Okay. And last but not least here, the Lawson add-ins use the Lawson Infor security. So next slide, please. So that's obviously important for management, for auditors, for your security officer, and so on. So prerequisites, there aren't really that many. You have to have a valid Lawson login, of course. So you have to have the access rights in either Lawson Security or LAUA or ISA. There's also, you'll see an attribute there that says allow add-ins that would need to be checked off. Next slide, please. Lastly, the Lawson Query Tools role would need to be in the Gen profile so you can access the tables that you need. Next slide. Okay, so there are many uses for the Excel add-ins. Just quickly running down here, the ones I have here for the Query Wizard, you can create an Excel report with up to the date live data as mentioned before. And this is what we refer to kind of as a list report. And so then you can save that query once you have the report, looking as you want. And then so you can rerun it, every month, every week as needed. And of course, as you get more familiar with the tool, you can do queries for last minute requests as well. The third bullet there for the Query Wizard is something that we recommended in the past, but now it's a little bit more useful. In preparation to upload data, you can create a download first that contains maybe 2 records that already exist in the application. And then your Excel result, that Excel sheet, can then be used as a template going forward for uploading records. So then you can use that template to fill in, so to speak, every month going forward. And there's some new functionality associated with that, which we'll see in the Upload Wizard, right? And the Upload Wizard, of course, can be used to upload new records, whether, the journal transactions, new assets, new items, new purchase orders, okay, whatever the case may be. And the Upload Wizard is also used for mass changes to a large number of records, right? Using Excel rather than attempting to do it manually, of course. You would download all of your data into Excel, edit, the information, and then, of course, the last step would be to upload that information back in using the change action. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So very quickly, some helpful hints. The first one is from Infor. Infor does not recommend having more than one Lawson add-in open simultaneously. So for example, if you run the Query Wizard and the Upload Wizard open, then the 2 programs may freeze. The second hint is, how do I find data for a query? This is a question that comes up often. So if you know the Lawson form that the data resides in, then you can basically find out the file behind that. And so in our example that we're going to run through, we're going to look at vendor tables and vendor locations. So I know that the vendor is in Lawson form AP10. So if you go to that form and just put the cursor in any field, you can hit Control-Shift-O. Okay, and then on the bottom left, you'll see that the file prefix will show the field number, long and short descriptions, and so on. So that will all show in the bottom left corner. We're primarily going to be interested in the file prefix, which I'll show you in the example shortly. If Control-Shift-O doesn't work, then do Control-Shift-I. And then if the next bullet, if your query does not complete and there is a data response timeout, then not everybody realizes there is a icon at the top, a green and yellow, which is a green and yellow arrow icon, where you can go in and extend your time in seconds. So I actually do have a screenshot of that because I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to see that. And then of course, it might be set for 60 seconds. You can increase it to 120 seconds or 180 seconds, what have you. And then of course, rerun your query. For increased efficiency on a query, we would recommend using index keys and conditions. So we'll see that as well. And speaking of data response timeout, if you're doing a query on the GLTrans file, which is the largest file in the system, it could certainly time out. We strongly recommend using filters if you're going against this file. This is the largest file as mentioned, so you may want to filter on fiscal year, and then period, and then company, and maybe accounting unit, and so on, just to make it a little bit more manageable. The next item here is that the GL journal number field is called control group in all the files. So that's the one that's not always readily apparent. And typically the GL journal number is set to auto number, and that's true in every version. It is, of course, an option, when you're setting up your company, but just about everybody sets it up to auto number. And that's true in version 9, version 10, as well as in FSM. Okay. And the last one is a question that comes up a lot, and that is if you upload a blank, how do you upload a blank to an alphanumeric field that already has something in it? And basically just put in an apostrophe and hit the space bar once. And then if you upload that, it should blank it out. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Yep. So looking at Excel, you can see here on the ribbon that add-ins is underscored there. And just very quickly, you'll notice that to the right of add-ins, there's also help, and then it says Infor. The Infor there is for the Infor Spreadsheet Designer, ISD. And you can have both installed in Excel. There's not a problem. Okay. Going back to add-ins, once you click on that, on the left, there's an Infor Lawson drop-down box. And of course, you can see here, your choices. We're going to start with the Lawson Query Wizard, which is the first one there. That's the green arrow is pointing to. So next slide, please. And so once you launch the Query Wizard, the first thing that's going to come up is basically a pop-up where you're going to need to enter your URL for the server. You may need to get this from your system admin or maybe your business team, but you will have to populate that and then click on Connect. And then to the right there, you'll see a pop-up will appear for your sign-in. This sign-in is going to look very much like the sign-in that you have for your Lawson applications. Again, keep in mind, security is the same. So whatever security you have in the applications will be the same here. Next slide, please. And once the Query Wizard opens, it's going to start in the Welcome tab that you can see here. And the first thing you'll need to do is to choose your query source. So in this example, we're going to do database tables because it's a little more efficient. And we're looking to create a report. Later on, we'll take a look at creating that upload template that I mentioned. And in that case, we'll use application. But right now, we're going to stick with database tables. And it is a little bit more efficient if you do go with this query source. Next slide, please. Then, of course, to navigate, you could click on Next or just click on the Folder tab. Either way, you want to get to the Fields tab, which you can see here. And the left panel is where you're going to start. You're going to see that you need to enter a product line, a system code, and a file. So here, our product line is dev. Yours most likely will be something like law prod or prod. Do not select Logan as the product line. And once you have that, once you click on that, what will happen is that we know in this case we want to go to System Accounts Payable, but we don't know the file within Accounts Payable. So what we're gonna do is, if you go to the next slide, is where we would normally go into the application. And so we would go transfer to AP10, And you could really put your cursor in any field. In this case, it's in the vendor group field, and hit Control-Shift-O. Okay, and then on the bottom left, you can see here in the screenshot, it's going to show you the field prefix, the field name, the ID number, the size, etc. What we really want to do is make note of the prefix. In this case, it's a VEN. Okay, it's always a 3-character prefix. So we'll take that, and next slide, please. And we will then go back to our query wizard, and in the bottom left, there's a table prefix translation section. We would type in VEN, and then you have to tab out of it. Make sure you tab out, and the system will return and say that the file behind that AP10 form, and where the vendor master data resides, is APVENMAST. And then in parentheses, it says system AP. We knew the system code already, but now we know the file. And so what you would do is you would double click on AP up above here. And then what that'll do is, next slide, please. It will basically show for you all the fields, right? As you scroll down and select APVENMAST, it'll show you all the fields there in the middle panel, okay? And so you'll see that in this case, I've already selected invoice group, and last update date, I think, is one, and location indicator. So when I would double click on any one of those fields, they will then appear in the panel at the far right. So you'll see there it says selected fields, and you know, I can add more fields here. This is just an example where I'm going to pull the vendor group. I want for my report the vendor name, the vendor status, the vendor class, and the vendor priority, and so on. You also will notice that there's a button near the bottom of the middle panel that says Select All Fields. Select All Fields, if you click on that, will give you the first 100 fields in the file. So if your file has more than 100 fields, then you may actually need to scroll down in that middle panel and maybe add more. Okay. If your file has less than 100 fields, then obviously you're going to get everything. Okay. Another thing I want to make you aware of is that there are times where, as in my example here, where I want the vendor information, but I also want the locations. You know, I may have some remit to locations or purchase to locations, purchase from locations that I want to include in my report. But those reside in another file. And it just so happens it's in the APVEN LOC file, which it does appear in that first panel on the left, but you don't want to click there. What you want to do is that you want to click on the related fields button on the bottom there, which is circled in green, highlighted in green. You want to click there, and then once that opens up, there you want to select the APVEN LOC file. So you would select it there, and then you would also, you know, determine which fields you want. So you would, you know, the fields would be listed very similar to what you see here, and then you would double click and say, yep, I would want an additional field for like the location name possibly, and the location address, and so on. Then when you click done, it would just bring you back here, and you would see those additional fields here in your right panel. In this case, it would be below location indicator if I had, you know, if I had selected some related files and some related fields. Okay, but going back to our current example here, yep. After you have your fields selected, you might go to the next tab, which is column headers, which is fine. We're going to skip that for now. You can change your column header names. That's not a big deal. But oops, sorry. Can you go back? Apologies. Yep, one slide. So what we do want to do is we want to look at the criteria tab. Okay, and so here, this is a key one. There's a lot here, so we'll have to spend a couple minutes on this one. Let's start in the upper right on the criteria tab. Notice there's a section there that says primary records to return, and I have 65,000 in there, which is kind of usually, you know, a good starting point. It's the most efficient one. And so if I run the query, I'm going to have 65,000 rows in my Excel. And if I do know that I have obviously more than 65,000 records, then of course, you could make that 125,000, 150,000, whatever you need. Okay. But you always want to make sure that, you're on the high end and not the low end. I know some people sometimes put in a blank or a zero here to get everything. And usually that's fine, although it's been a little kludgy at times. So just throwing that out there. Below maximum primary records to return, you'll see there's a maximum OTM values to return. OTM stands for one to many. So let's say in our example, let's say that for every vendor, let's just say hypothetically, I have 4 locations. Okay. So I have 1,000 vendors, primary vendors, excuse me, and each one has 4 locations, let's say for argument's sake. And so my one to many would be 1 to 4 ratio. So if I ran the query as it is now and I left the maximum OTM as 1, I would get each of my vendors plus the first location, right? Just one location that would appear. But if I change that maximum OTM to 4 or to make it safe, maybe to 10 or 15, then I would get Excel results with 4,000 rows. I would get each vendor and all 4 locations for each individual vendor. Okay. Looking at the criteria tab here, let's now move over to the left where we have the indexes. So we have various index files here. And, sometimes you're not sure which one to pick. So you have to just click on each one to see what the available index keys are. But in this case, they've selected VEN set 2. And in the middle panel there, it shows you the 3 index keys. Now, this one only has 3, but sometimes there's more. And you can go into put in the key value. In this case, for the vendor group, for example, we want everything in our vendor group ALL. And then for the next key value for vendor class, we want vendor class SUP, which is, let's say, all of our suppliers. And then the next one for vendor is blank, which is fine. So you basically want everything. The system will stop whenever it hits a blank, so it won't look further. And in this case, yes, you will get all your supplier vendors. In addition, you'll notice there's a section here called conditions, which a lot of people don't utilize very often, but sometimes there are conditions that you can take advantage of here. You can only select one condition. And here in this case, we selected active vendor. So in this case, I don't want any inactive vendors. So that's the condition that I chose. We're going to move forward to the next example, but let's assume I don't pick that condition. If we go to the next slide. I want to just show you very quickly. The next tab is for criteria selection. This gives you a little bit more flexibility, but it also is a little bit less efficient. But let's say I did want to stick with my simple example here, and I just want all vendor statuses or all vendors that are active. In this case, in the selection criteria, I would pick vendor status as my field. Then in the operand, I would say not equal to, and then the value would be I for inactive. I would click on the add criteria button here, and then I would see that it accepted my criteria in the bottom there. Okay, so this would be one example. Next slide, please. If you wanted to do multiple criteria, then here you could do something along these lines where I could say vendor status is now equal to A for active and or equal to D. D is one of the 3 valid statuses. So D is basically disallow PO add. And of course, A is active and I is inactive. So in this case, this is an or statement. So that is the conjunction that we use. And in the next example, we're going to be using also multiple criteria. Next slide, please. Where we would basically do an or statement, which we would group. So I would take my existing vendor statuses that I had. I would highlight those and then click on group criteria. And so the system kind of puts in like these brackets. You can kind of see it's little, there, the beginning and end. So it's going to do that operation first. And then I have an and statement where I've added and also where location indicator does not equal blank. Okay. So my results are going to be far less in this example because now it's not just those based active vendors, but also those where the location flag is not equal to blank. So, so that's just a couple examples here. Next slide, please. You can also click on, of course, if you're working the system on subtotals, on sort, on format, so you can have the Excel query wizard sort the data, exactly as you want it. Or, of course, you could do that once it's in Excel. It's similar functionality to what you have in Excel. But the format tab here is the key one. I just wanted to show. And here you would go in and indicate the sheet that you want your results to appear in. In this case, the example is sheet 3, and it's column A, row 1. If I already have information, let's say in the first 200 rows of sheet 3, and I don't want to overlay that, maybe I say to start in column A in row 205 or something like that. Okay. And then, of course, normally you would just click finish on the bottom there, and the system will return your results in Excel. Okay, next slide, please. What if your results, however, do not appear? Well, my query times out. Then what you would want to do is you would go back into your query wizard and click on the yellow and green IO icon. And then it'll bring up your user preferences, as you can see. And you need to change your data response timeout. So right now here in this example, it's at 60 seconds. You can change it to 120 seconds or maybe 3 minutes, 180 seconds as needed. Okay. And so I just want to make sure everybody was aware of that one. It's easy to miss. Next slide, please. So we're going to start looking at uploads. Next slide. But before we do, we're actually going to return to queries still. So if you recall, when we first were doing the query, we had to choose a query source, and we had selected database tables before because we were doing a report with vendor information. Now what we want to do is we want to build an upload template. So in order to do that quickly and easily, we're going to select here application instead as our query source. So we're going to wind up selecting a form. You'll see that. So if you click on the next slide, please. So if you then go to your Fields tab, you'll notice in the left panel, it's similar. You have a product line, a system code, but now instead of a file, you would select a form. And in this case, we selected and clicked on AP10. When we did that, of course, in the middle panel, all of our fields displayed, and we would select the fields that we want. And as you double click those, they would appear in the right panel for selected fields. Okay, so you can see here it also has the field numbers. Next slide, please. Once you click on finish and you get your results, here's what it would look like in Excel. And you can notice that the row 1 headers, right? We have F3 VEN-vendor-group. Then in column B for the header, we have F6, field 6, VEN-vendor. And then, of course, field 7, VEN-vendor VName, and so on. Okay. One note here is do not change the column headings if you plan to use this as a template going forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so now let's assume that we close the query wizard and we open the upload wizard. Okay. Once we launch the upload wizard, the first thing you're going to just see is this pop-up from Infor. The one thing I'll just mention here, it says improper use of the upload wizard may cause irreversible data loss. That is true. I will also add, however, that if you do the delete action, then the system will prompt you and make sure that, are you certain you want to continue to delete data? So it kind of gives you that warning. Next slide, please. After you click yes here, you will see the welcome tab. It's a little different than the other one. And the only thing I'll note here is that it does say on the tab here, during the upload process, the data is checked to ensure it passes the defined business rules before it is accepted. And that's basically true if you're just as if you were adding the information manually into the form itself in AP10. Next slide, please. So you would then click on next or go to the map columns tab. And here you would normally click on your product line, then you would click on your system code just as before, and then you would select the form. So next slide, please. And so you'll see the forms are listed, and you'll have to scroll down until you find AP10, and then you would single click on AP10. Next slide. And then what that will do is it will display the map field section here, and you'll see it in yellow there. It's highlighted. It's saying that we're mapping sheet 3. Okay. And then you'll see that there's worksheet columns A, B, C, D, but there's no Lawson fields associated with those. You could go in and manually click on the dropdown for each of those columns and map them that way. Or the nice new functionality that we have available now is on the bottom right, you see there's a button that says auto populate. So next slide, please. If you click on auto populate, what that'll do is it'll bring up this pop-up window, and it says, are you sure you want to auto populate? And also it wants you to put in the first and last header cell. So in this example, it's A1 through J1, and you would simply click OK. Next slide, please. And then what will happen is you'll notice now that the Lawson fields are all populated, right? So worksheet column A is mapped to field 3, then vendor group. But make sure you check each column to make sure it's correct. It does sometimes make mistakes. So in this case, if you look at column B, that's also mapped to field 3, vendor group as well. So that needs to be corrected. Next slide, please. So you would need to just go into the drop-down list next to that and change it to field 6 for vendor. Okay. And of course, you would need to put in your row range. Typically, your row range starts with row 2. And then you would put it through whatever, row 26 in this example, but you would obviously just put in the range that you would need. And then next slide, please. Then you would just simply go to your upload tab, select the action you want to do. In this case, it would be a change only. Notice that Infor took away the other options on the right that used to exist there before. We're dealing with multi-threading and the pre-inquire status. So those are now gone. You would simply just click on upload here, and then the system will basically have one more pop-up. Next slide, please. And it says you're about to upload worksheet. And in my case, it was called vendors_test. And do you want to continue? This is new. This is because users used to have multiple Excels open in the past. So this is just confirming that you do want to upload from this particular sheet. And then that's it. Once you've done that, you click on yes. And then in the next slide, this system will return the results once the upload is complete. In this case, total records updated was 26. And the last slide, of course, will show you your results with line-by-line information. So you obviously want to see change complete or add complete to make sure everything is good. If not, if you have some errors on certain lines, you could always resort this in Excel, correct the errors, and then just upload, those rows again.